It was a bright, sunny Saturday morning in Oakwood Hills. The birds were chirping, the grass was green, and the air smelled like fresh flowers. In this little neighborhood, 12-year-old Timmy Jackson was ready to have a fun weekend. Timmy was a happy kid. He had a big smile that made everyone feel good. He loved helping people, too. If someone dropped their groceries, Timmy was there to pick them up. If a dog ran loose, Timmy would chase it down and bring it back. Everyone in Oakwood Hills liked Timmy. Well, almost everyone. There was one person who didn't like Timmy at all. Her name was Mrs. Linda Grayson. She was an older lady with sharp eyes and a loud voice. She lived just 2 houses down from Timmy, and she thought she was the boss of the whole neighborhood. Mrs. Grayson called herself the HOA Queen. HOA stands for Homeowners Association, which is a group that makes rules for the neighborhood. Mrs. Grayson loved rules. She loved them so much that she carried a little book of them everywhere she went. As if someone's grass was too tall, she'd knock on their door and tell them to cut it. If a kid left a bike in the yard, she'd write a note saying it wasn't allowed. To her, everything had to be perfect. But when it came to Timmy, Mrs. Grayson didn't just want things perfect, she wanted him gone. She didn't like how he was always outside playing or fixing things. To her, Timmy was a troublemaker. She'd squint at him from her porch and mutter, "That boy, up to no good." She didn't care that he was nice to everyone. She didn't care that he helped old Mr. Thompson carry his trash cans or that he once found Mrs. Carter's lost cat. To Mrs. Grayson, Timmy was a problem waiting to happen. She'd watch him with her arms crossed, her lips tight, like she was waiting for him to mess up. What Mrs. Grayson didn't know was that Timmy wasn't just any kid. He had a secret, a big one. It wasn't something bad, like stealing cookies or breaking windows. No, Timmy's secret was something cool, something that would turn everything upside down. He wasn't the kind of kid to brag about it, though. He kept it quiet, tucked away like a treasure in his pocket. And on this sunny Saturday morning, that secret was about to start something wild. Let's rewind a little. Timmy lived in a small house with his mom and his little sister, Jenny. Their house was painted yellow and it had a big oak tree in the front yard. Timmy loved that tree. He'd climb it sometimes just to sit and think. He was a thinker, you see. He liked figuring things out. If something was broken, a toy, a chair, even the squeaky screen door, he'd grab his toolbox and fix it. His toolbox was his favorite thing. It was red and shiny, and it had screwdrivers, a hammer, and all sorts of little gadgets. Timmy's mom would laugh and say, "You're my little repairman." He'd grin and keep working. That Saturday, Timmy woke up early. The sun was just peeking over the houses, painting the sky orange and pink. He jumped out of bed, pulled on his favorite blue shirt, and ran to the kitchen. His mom was making pancakes and Jenny was coloring at the table. "Morning, Timmy," his mom said with a smile. "What's your big plan today?" Timmy shrugged and said, "I dunno, maybe I'll fix something." His mom nodded. She was used to Timmy's projects. Jenny looked up from her crayons and giggled. "Fix my doll," she said, holding up a toy with a wobbly arm. Timmy laughed. "Okay, squirt later." After breakfast, Timmy grabbed his toolbox and headed outside. The air felt warm and a soft breeze rustled the leaves on the oak tree. He decided to check on the mailbox. It was an old, rusty thing at the end of their driveway. The lid creaked every time they opened it and the paint was peeling off. Timmy thought it looked sad. I can make it better, he said to himself. He ran back to the garage, grabbed some blue paint and a brush and got to work. He painted the mailbox a bright, happy blue. Then he added a little hinge from his toolbox so the lid wouldn't creak anymore. When he was done, he stepped back and smiled. It looked awesome. But not everyone thought so. Across the street, Mrs. Grayson was watching. She'd been sitting on her porch with a cup of tea, her rulebook open on her lap. When she saw Timmy painting, her eyes narrowed. She didn't like bright colors. She didn't like kids doing things without asking her first. To her, that blue mailbox was a crime. She stood up, her chair scraping the porch, and marched over to Timmy's yard. Her slippers slapped the pavement with every step. "What do you think you're doing?" she snapped. Timmy looked up, surprised. Fixing the mailbox," he said. Mrs. Grayson pointed at it like it was a monster. "That color, not allowed. It's ugly. The rules say mailboxes have to be gray or black." Timmy blinked. "It's just paint," he said, but Mrs. Grayson wasn't listening. Her face turned red and she waved her rulebook in the air. "This is my neighborhood and I say what goes. You're in big trouble, young man." Timmy's mom heard the yelling and came outside. "What's wrong?" she asked. Mrs. Grayson spun around. "Your son's breaking the rules. I'm calling the police." Timmy's mom frowned. "It's just a mailbox, Linda. Calm down." But Mrs. Grayson didn't calm down. She stormed back to her house, muttering about disrespect and troublemakers. Timmy watched her go, his paintbrush still in his hand. He didn't say anything, but his brain was already working. Mrs. Grayson thought she'd won this round. She thought Timmy was just a kid she could boss around. She had no idea what was coming. See, Timmy wasn't scared of Mrs. Grayson. He wasn't mad either. He was smart, smarter than she thought. While she was busy yelling about rules, Timmy was thinking about his secret. It wasn't just the mailbox he'd been working on. There was something else, something he'd been building in the garage for weeks, something that would make Mrs. Grayson wish she'd left him alone. He didn't tell his mom or Jenny. He didn't tell his friends at school. It was his little surprise, and he was saving it for the right moment. The neighborhood was quiet again after Mrs. Grayson left. Timmy's mom shook her head and went back inside. Jenny peeked out the window and waved at Timmy. He waved back, then looked at his blue mailbox. It still looked awesome to him. He wasn't going to let Mrs. Grayson ruin his day, but he knew she wouldn't stop. She'd be back, probably with more rules and more yelling. That's how she was, and that's why Timmy's secret was so important. So here's the thing, this story's just getting started. That sunny Saturday morning was about to turn into something crazy. Mrs. Grayson thought she was the queen of Oakwood Hills, but Timmy, he was the real surprise. And trust me, you're gonna want to stick around to see what happens next. Oh, and before I forget, I've got a question for you. What's the wildest thing a neighbor's ever done to you? Maybe they yelled at you for something silly, like Timmy's mailbox. Maybe they did something even weirder. Drop your stories in the comments below. I'm dying to hear them. And if you're liking this so far, tell me where you're watching from today. Let's make this fun. Timmy's weekend was about to get a lot more exciting. Mrs. Grayson had no clue what she'd started, and that secret up Timmy's sleeve, it was going to change everything. Ready to find out what it is? Keep watching, because the best part's coming up. It all started with Timmy's mailbox. Timmy was a kid who loved making things. He was always building stuff like little gadgets, fun toys, and even a robot dog once. He kept a red toolbox in the garage full of tools like screwdrivers, a hammer, and some shiny bolts. If something broke, Timmy could fix it. He liked making things better. So one sunny day, he looked at his family's mailbox. It was old and rusty. The lid made a loud creak every time you opened it, and the paint was peeling off like dry skin. Timmy didn't like that. He thought it looked sad and boring. "I can fix this," Timmy said to himself. He ran to the garage and grabbed his toolbox. Then he found a can of bright blue paint and a little brush. Blue was his favorite color. It reminded him of the sky and the ocean. He also took a tiny hinge from his pile of parts. A hinge is a little metal piece that helps things open and close without squeaking. Timmy got to work. He painted the mailbox a happy bright blue. He wiped off the rust with a rag and screwed the hinge onto the lid. When he was done, he opened and closed it a few times. No more creak, it moved smooth and quiet. Timmy smiled big. To him, it was perfect. It wasn't hurting anyone, right? Just a kid fixing something old. But not everyone thought so. Mrs. Linda Grayson lived 2 houses down. She was the kind of lady who watched everything. Her eyes were sharp like a hawk's, and she never missed a thing. Mrs. Grayson called herself the HOA Queen. HOA means Homeowners Association, a group that makes rules for the neighborhood. She loved rules more than anything. She had a little book full of them, and she carried it everywhere. If your grass was too long, she'd tell you to cut it. If you parked your car in the wrong spot, she'd leave a note. Mrs. Grayson thought she was in charge of Oakwood Hills, and she didn't like anything or anyone breaking her rules. That day, Mrs. Grayson was sitting on her porch. She had a cup of tea in one hand and her rulebook in the other. She looked across the street and saw Timmy painting. Her eyes got small and squinty. She didn't like bright color. She didn't like kids doing things she didn't say yes to. To her, that blue mailbox was like a big loud scream in her quiet, perfect world. She put her tea down, stood up fast, and marched over to Timmy's yard. Her slippers went slap, slap, slap on the pavement. Her face was already turning red, like a ripe tomato ready to burst. "What are you doing?" she yelled. Her voice was loud and sharp, like a teacher scolding a kid in class. Timmy looked up from his mailbox. He was still holding his paintbrush, and a little blue paint dripped onto the grass. I'm fixing the mailbox," he said. He didn't know why she was so mad. It was just paint and a hinge. But Mrs. Grayson didn't care. She pointed at the mailbox with a shaky finger. "That lid's against the rule," she shouted. "It's ugly. It's an eyesore." An eyesore means something that looks bad, but Timmy didn't think it was bad at all. He thought it was cool. Timmy just stood there, confused. He didn't know what to say. Mrs. Grayson kept going. She pulled her rulebook out of her pocket and waved it in the air like it was a sword. "The HOA says mailboxes have to be gray or black, no bright colors. You're breaking the rules, young man." Her voice got louder and louder. Timmy scratched his head. "It's just a mailbox," he said quietly. But that made Mrs. Grayson even madder. Her eyes got big and she stepped closer. "Just a mailbox," she screeched. "This is my neighborhood and I won't let you ruin it. I'm calling the police." Timmy's mom heard all the yelling from inside the house. She was in the kitchen washing dishes when Mrs. Grayson's voice cut through the air. She dried her hands on a towel and hurried outside. "What's going on?" she asked. she saw Timmy standing by the mailbox looking lost and Mrs. Grayson pointing and shouting. "Linda, what's wrong?" Timmy's mom said. She called Mrs. Grayson by her first name because they'd lived near each other for years. But Mrs. Grayson didn't want to be friendly. She spun around to face Timmy's mom. "Your son painted that mailbox blue," she said, like it was the worst crime ever. "It's against the rules and I'm reporting him." Timmy's mom looked at the mailbox. She saw the bright blue paint and the shiny new hinge. She smiled a little because it looked nice to her. "It's just a mailbox, Linda," she said. "It's not hurting anyone. Calm down." But Mrs. Grayson didn't calm down. Her face got even redder and she shook her head so hard her glasses almost fell off. "Calm down," she yelled. "This is disrespect. This is chaos. I'm the HOA queen and I say that mailbox has to go. The police will handle this." Then she turned and stormed back to her house, her slippers slapping the ground louder than before. Timmy's mom sighed. She put her hand on Timmy's shoulder. "Don't worry about her," she said. "She's just grumpy. The mailbox looks great." Timmy nodded, but he didn't say much. He watched Mrs. Grayson disappear into her house. He knew she wasn't done. She'd be back, probably with more yelling or some new plan to get him in trouble. That's how she was, always picking on people, always acting like she owned everything. But Timmy wasn't scared. He wasn't even mad. He was thinking. See, Mrs. Grayson wanted Timmy in trouble, big trouble. She thought he was just a kid she could boss around. She thought calling the police would scare him and make him take the paint off. She wanted everyone to see she was in charge. But here's the thing, trouble wasn't coming for Timmy. Nope, trouble was the last thing Mrs. Grayson should have been worried about. She didn't know it yet, but she'd just poked a bear named Timmy Jackson. Timmy wasn't like other kids. Sure, he was nice and helpful, but he was also smart, really smart. He didn't just fix things for fun, he watched and listened. He noticed stuff other people didn't, like how Mrs. Grayson peeked out her windows all day, spying on everyone, or how she wrote little notes about every rule someone broke. Timmy had been keeping an eye on her too, and that mailbox, it wasn't just a project to make things pretty. It was the start of something bigger. While Mrs. Grayson was inside her house, probably dialing the police, Timmy picked up his paintbrush and toolbox. He looked at the blue mailbox one more time. It still made him happy, even after all the yelling. He wasn't going to let Mrs. Grayson ruin his day, but he also wasn't going to let her win. She thought she could push him around because he was just a kid. She thought she was the boss of everything. But Timmy had a trick up his sleeve, something she'd never see coming. The air was still warm and the sun was high in the sky. The neighborhood was quiet again, but it wouldn't stay that way for long. Mrs. Grayson was mad, and when she got mad, she got loud. Timmy knew that. He'd heard her yell at other people before about their dogs, their trash cans, even their flowers. She always acted like she was right and everyone else was wrong. But this time, she'd picked the wrong kid to mess with. Timmy's mom went back inside, telling him to come in if he needed her. Timmy stayed outside a little longer. He sat on the grass by the mailbox and opened his toolbox. He pulled out a small notebook he kept in there. It was full of drawings and ideas, stuff he wanted to build someday. He flipped to a page near the back. There was a sketch of something special, something he'd been working on in secret. He smiled at it. Mrs. Grayson thought she was starting a fight, but Timmy was already steps ahead. Little did she know, her big plan to get Timmy in trouble was about to fall apart. She thought the police would come and tell him off. She thought she'd stand there smirking while he scrubbed the paint away. But Timmy wasn't worried. He wasn't shaking or crying. He was calm because trouble, it wasn't coming for him. It was heading straight for Mrs. Grayson, and she had no idea. The tension was building like a storm cloud, getting bigger and darker. Mrs. Grayson was ready to fight. Timmy was ready to win. And that blue mailbox, it was just the beginning. The next few days in Oakwood Hills were quiet on the outside, but things were heating up. Mrs. Linda Grayson, the self-called HOA queen, was on a mission. She didn't like Timmy Jackson one bit, and that blue mailbox he'd painted was stuck in her head like a bad song. She couldn't let it go. To her, it wasn't just a mailbox, it was a sign that Timmy didn't follow her rules. And if there was one thing Mrs. Grayson hated, it was people ignoring her rules. So she watched him. She watched him like a hawk circling over a field, waiting for something to move. Mrs. Grayson had a big window in her living room that faced Timmy's house. Every morning, she'd sit there with her cup of tea. She'd pull the curtain back just a little and peek out. Her eyes were sharp, and she didn't miss a thing. If Timmy walked outside to get the mail, she'd grab her little notebook and write it down. 9:15 a.m. boy left the house, she'd scribble. If he rode his bike down the street, she'd jot that down too. 9:30 a.m. riding too fast, she'd mutter. She even wrote about the time he waved at old Mr. Thompson across the street. He's up to something, she said to herself, tapping her pen on the page. I just know it. To Mrs. Grayson, Timmy wasn't just a 12-year-old kid. He was a troublemaker, a rule breaker. She didn't care that everyone else liked him. She didn't care that he was always smiling or helping people. All she saw was that blue mailbox and the way Timmy didn't seem scared of her. That made her mad, really mad. She'd sit there sipping her tea, her lips tight, thinking about how she could catch him doing something wrong. He's sneaky, she'd whisper, but I'm sneakier. Meanwhile, Timmy wasn't worried at all. He knew Mrs. Grayson was watching him. He could see her curtain move every time he stepped outside. He'd catch a glimpse of her glasses shining in the sunlight, peeking through the gap. Most kids might get nervous or upset if someone was staring at them all the time. Not Timmy. He wasn't scared. He wasn't even mad. He was planning. See, Timmy wasn't like other kids. Sure, he liked playing and riding his bike, but he also loved building things. And he was good at it, really good. Every afternoon after lunch, Timmy would head to the garage. It was his favorite place. The garage smelled like oil and wood, and it was full of stuff he could use. There were shelves with old cans of paint, boxes of nails, and piles of scrap metal. Timmy's red toolbox sat on a little table in the corner. It was his treasure chest, full of tools he'd collected over the years. He'd grab it and get to work. Sometimes he'd fix little things, like his sister Jenny's toys. Other times he'd build something new, like a birdhouse or a mini car that rolled on wheels. But these days he was working on something different, something special, something secret. Timmy didn't tell anyone about it, not his mom, not Jenny, not even his best friend Sam from school. He kept it all to himself. He'd sit in the garage with the door cracked open just enough to let some air in. The light from the sun would spill across the floor, and he'd hunch over his project, his hands moving fast. He'd hammer, screw, and twist things together. Sometimes he'd stop and look at his little notebook, the one he kept in his toolbox. It had drawings in it, sketches of what he was making. He'd smile at the pages, then get back to work. Whatever it wasn't just a toy. It was big, it was smart, and it was going to surprise everyone. Mrs. Grayson didn't know about Timmy's secret project, but she could tell he was busy. She'd see him go into the garage every day. She'd hear the clink of metal or the tap of a hammer through her open window. "What's he doing in there?" she'd mutter, scribbling more notes. "He's building something, something bad, I bet." She didn't have proof, but she didn't need it. In her mind, Timmy was already guilty. That blue mailbox was just the start. She was sure he was planning more trouble. So she kept watching, waiting for him to slip up. Every time Mrs. Grayson saw Timmy, she'd try to scare him. If he walked by her house, she'd step outside and yell, "I'm watching you, young man." Her voice was loud and mean, like a teacher catching you chewing gum in class. She'd wave her rulebook and point at him. "You can't fool me," she'd say. Most kids would run away or say sorry. Not Timmy. He'd just look at her, give a little smile, and wave. "Hi, Mrs. Grayson," he'd say, nice and calm. Then he'd keep walking, like nothing was wrong. That drove her crazy. "Why's he smiling?" she'd mutter. "What's he hiding?" And guess what? Timmy was hiding something. Every time he smiled and waved, it was like a little hint. He knew something Mrs. Grayson didn't. He wasn't just fixing toys or painting mailboxes. He was working on his secret, and it was almost ready. That smile wasn't because he was being polite. It was because he had a plan Mrs. Grayson wouldn't see coming. She thought she was the smartest person in the neighborhood, but Timmy was smarter. Way smarter. The days went by and the tension got thicker. Mrs. Grayson started telling other neighbors about Timmy. She'd knock on their doors, her rulebook in hand, and say, "That Jackson boy is trouble. He painted his mailbox blue and now he's up to something in that garage." Some neighbors just nodded and closed their door. They didn't care about a mailbox. Others, like old Mr. Thompson, would laugh. "He's a good kid, Linda," Mr. Thompson said once. "Leave him alone." But Mrs. Grayson wouldn't listen. She'd huff and stomp off, more determined than ever. One afternoon, she got bold. Timmy was outside, carrying a small box from the garage to the house. It was just some old parts he didn't need anymore, but Mrs. Grayson didn't know that. She saw him and ran over faster than usual. "What's in that box?" she shouted. "What are you hiding?" Timmy stopped and turned around. "Just junk," he said, holding it up so she could see. It was full of bent nails and rusty screws. Mrs. Grayson squinted at it, then at him. "I don't believe you," she said. "You're sneaky. I'm going to find out what you're doing." Timmy shrugged. "Okay," he said, then walked inside. He didn't argue, he didn't fight, he just smiled again. That night, Mrs. Grayson sat at her kitchen table. She had her notebook open, full of pages about Timmy. "He's too calm," she wrote. "He's planning something big." She tapped her pen and frowned. She didn't like how he wasn't scared of her. She didn't like how he kept working in that garage. She decided she'd had enough. "I'll stop him," she said to herself. "I'll call the police and tell them he's causing trouble. That'll teach him." She nodded, sure she'd win. She thought Timmy was just a kid she could bully. She thought her rules would beat him. But Timmy wasn't worried. He was in the garage putting the last touches on his secret. He tightened a screw, tested a button, and grinned. It was ready. Whatever it was going to change everything. Mrs. Grayson thought she was in control, but every day, every note she wrote, every yell she let out, it was bringing her closer to a big surprise. Timmy wasn't just tinkering. He was waiting for the perfect moment. So what do you think Timmy's hiding? Is it a toy, a trick, something even cooler? I bet you've got some guesses. Drop them in the comments below. I'm dying to hear what you think. I'll give you a hint soon, but here's a little one for now. It's small, it's smart, and it's going to make Mrs. Grayson wish she'd never messed with that mailbox. Stick around, because things are about to get wild. Monday afternoon came fast in Oakwood Hills. The sun was still up, shining bright, and the neighborhood was quiet, too quiet. Mrs. Linda Grayson, the HOA queen, had been waiting for this moment. She'd spent days watching Timmy, writing notes, and getting madder every time she saw that blue mailbox. To her, it wasn't just paint on metal. It was a big, loud sign that Timmy didn't listen to her rule. And Mrs. Grayson couldn't stand that. She had enough. She was ready to make her move, and she was sure she'd win. Inside her house, Mrs. Grayson paced back and forth. Her slippers slapped the floor and her hands shook a little, not because she was scared, but because she was so excited. She'd been planning this all weekend. She grabbed her phone off the kitchen table and held it tight. "This is it," she said to herself. "That boy's going down." She dialed 911, the emergency number, and put the phone to her ear. When the operator answered, Mrs. Grayson didn't wait. She made her voice sound shaky, like she was in big trouble. "Help," she said. "There's a kid causing chaos in my neighborhood. His mailbox is a danger. Come quick." On the other end, the operator asked a few questions. "What's the problem with the mailbox?" they said. Mrs. Grayson didn't miss a beat. "It's bright blue," she shouted. "It's against the rules. He's breaking everything. Hurry." She made it sound like the world was ending, like that mailbox was going to ruin Oakwood Hills forever. The operator said, "Okay, we'll send someone." Mrs. Grayson hung up and smiled. It wasn't a nice smile, it was a sneaky one. She peeked out her window, waiting. "I've got him now," she whispered. She thought she'd won. She thought the police would come, yell at Timmy, and make him take the paint off. She could already picture herself standing there, arms crossed, smirking as he scrubbed. It didn't take long. Within minutes, a police car rolled down the street. Its lights weren't flashing, but the black and white paint made it look serious. The car stopped right in front of Timmy's house next to that bright blue mailbox. Mrs. Grayson hurried outside. She didn't even put on real shoes, just her slippers. She stood on her porch, watching, her heart beating fast. "Here we go," she said under her breath. She was so sure this was her big moment. She thought Timmy would be scared, that his mom would be mad, and that everyone would see she was the boss. The car door opened and an officer stepped out. He was tall, with a blue uniform and a shiny badge on his chest. Mrs. Grayson's smirk got bigger. She took a step forward, ready to point at Timmy and say, "That's him." But then something happened, something she didn't expect. The officer turned around and Mrs. Grayson's jaw dropped. Her mouth fell open so wide you could have tossed a cookie in there. It wasn't just any officer. It was Officer Daniels, Timmy's uncle. Mrs. Grayson froze. Her eyes got big and her face went from red to white in 2 seconds flat. She didn't know what to say. She didn't know what to do. Officer Daniels looked at her, then at the mailbox, then back at her. He didn't smile, he didn't frown, he just crossed his arms and stood there, tall and calm. Timmy was outside too. He'd been in the yard, kicking a ball around. When he saw the police car, he stopped and walked over, but he wasn't scared. Nope, he was grinning. A big happy grin, like he'd just won a prize. "Mrs. Grayson," Officer Daniels said, his voice deep and steady, "I think we need to talk about you breaking the rules." Mrs. Grayson blinked. She opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again. What? She stammered. She sounded like a fish gulping for air. She didn't get it. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. The police were supposed to be on her side. They were supposed to tell Timmy off, not her. But Officer Daniels didn't move. He just stared at her, waiting. Now Timmy stepped closer, still grinning. "Hi, Uncle Mike," he said, waving at Officer Daniels. Mrs. Grayson's head snapped toward him. "Uncle," she squeaked. That's when it hit her. Timmy wasn't just some kid. He had family on the police force. And that wasn't all. There was more, way more. See, Timmy had been busy. For weeks, he'd been working on something in his garage. It wasn't a toy car or a birdhouse. It was a mini security camera. Yep, a tiny little camera he'd built himself. It was small enough to fit in your hand, with a lens no bigger than a button. Timmy had made it from parts he found, old wires, a cheap battery, and some stuff from his toolbox. He'd hooked it up to a little screen he kept in the garage. It could record video, and it worked great. He'd hidden it near the mailbox, tucked behind a bush where no one would see it. Why? Because he knew Mrs. Grayson was trouble. That camera had been rolling for days. It caught everything. It caught Mrs. Grayson sneaking around, peeking into people's yards. It caught her looking through Mr. Thompson's trash cans one night, trying to find something to complain about. It caught her measuring Mrs. Carter's flowers with a ruler, muttering about how they were too tall. It even caught her standing by Timmy's mailbox, shaking her fist at it when no one was around. She thought she was sneaky, but Timmy's camera saw it all. Timmy didn't keep it a secret from everyone. He'd shown the videos to his Uncle Mike, Officer Daniels, a few days ago. He'd gone to his uncle's house with his little screen and said, "Look at this." Officer Daniels watched, his eyebrows going up higher with every clip. "She's been doing this for weeks?" he asked. Timmy nodded. "Yep, she's always watching us. I just wanted proof." Officer Daniels rubbed his chin. "Good work, Timmy," he said. "I'll keep an eye on things." He didn't tell Timmy what he'd do, but he had a plan. And now here he was, standing in front of Mrs. Grayson. Mrs. Grayson didn't know about the camera yet. She was still trying to figure out why Officer Daniels wasn't yelling at Timmy. "This is about the mailbox," she said, her voice loud again. "It's blue, it's against the rules." She waved her rule book like that would fix everything. Officer Daniels shook his head. "I'm not here about the mailbox, Linda," he said. He knew her name because he'd lived in Oakwood Hills before, back when Timmy was little. "I'm here about you." Timmy piped up. "I've got videos," he said, his grin getting bigger. Mrs. Grayson turned to him, her eyes wide. "Videos?" she said. "What videos?" Timmy pointed to the bush by the mailbox. "My camera, been watching you," he said. "You've been sneaking around, breaking rules, like going into people's yards without asking. That's not allowed." He said it so simple, so calm, like he was just telling her the weather. Mrs. Grayson's face went pale. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. "A C camera," she stuttered. "You can't do that. That's spying." Officer Daniels stepped forward. "No, Linda," he said. "What you've been doing is wrong. Trespassing is against the law. Snooping in people's trash, that's not okay either. Timmy's camera was on his own property. He's allowed to record there." Mrs. Grayson's mouth flapped open and shut, but no words came out. She was caught, and she knew it. Timmy's mom came outside then. She'd heard the police car and wanted to see what was happening. "Mike," she said, seeing Officer Daniels. "What's going on?" He smiled at her. "Hey sis," he said. Yep, he was her brother, Timmy's uncle. "Timmy's been helping me out, showed me some videos of Mrs. Grayson here breaking a few rules." Timmy's mom looked at Timmy, then at Mrs. Grayson, then back at Timmy. "Videos," she said. Timmy nodded. "I made a camera," he said proudly. "Caught her sneaking around." Mrs. Grayson tried one last time. "This is ridiculous," she shouted. "I'm the HOA queen, I make the rules." But Officer Daniels didn't budge. "Not anymore," he said. "You don't get to break the law just because you've got a rule book. We're going to have a talk about this." He didn't arrest her, not yet, but his voice said he was serious. Mrs. Grayson's shoulders slumped. She looked small all of a sudden, not like a queen at all. Timmy stood there, still grinning. He'd done it. His secret camera had turned everything around. Mrs. Grayson thought she'd get him in trouble, but now she was the one in hot water. The big reveal was out, and it was better than anyone expected. After the big showdown with Officer Daniels, the neighborhood couldn't stop talking. Everyone in Oakwood Hills heard about what happened. Mrs. Grayson's plan to get Timmy in trouble with her 911 call didn't work. It blew up in her face. People whispered about it on their porches and chatted about it while walking their dogs. The news spread fast, like bees buzzing around a hive. Mrs. Grayson thought she was so smart, but now everyone knew the truth. Officer Daniels didn't let her off easy. He stood there in his blue uniform, arms crossed, and gave her a big warning. "You can't call the police for silly things like a mailbox," he said, his voice serious. "That's wasting our time, Linda. Don't do it again." Mrs. Grayson's face turned red, then white. She didn't say a word, she just nodded and looked at the ground. She knew she'd messed up, and she didn't like that Timmy's uncle was the one telling her so. But that wasn't the end of it. Timmy's secret camera video was the real star. A few days later, there was an HOA meeting. That's when all the neighbors get together to talk about rules and stuff. Timmy's mom brought the little screen from his garage and they played the video for everyone. The room got quiet as they watched. There was Mrs. Grayson sneaking into yards, peeking in trash cans, and shaking her fist at Timmy's mailbox. People gasped. Some shook their heads. Old Mr. Thompson even laughed and said, "She thought no one would see." The neighbors were mad. They didn't like how Mrs. Grayson acted like she owned the whole place. "She's not the boss of us," said Mrs. Carter, who'd caught her measuring flowers once. So they took a vote that night. Everyone raised their hands to kick Mrs. Grayson out as HOA president. She didn't get one vote to stay, not one. She sat there, quiet, as they picked someone new. Her days as the HOA queen were over. Timmy, though, he was the hero. When the meeting ended, people clapped for him. "Way to go, Timmy," they shouted. Kids high-fived him and grown-ups smiled big. They loved how he'd outsmarted Mrs. Grayson with his camera. His bright blue mailbox stayed right where it was. No one dared tell him to change it. Even better, the town heard about his clever idea. A week later, they gave him a little award, a shiny plaque that said "Smart Kid of the Year." Timmy's mom hung it on the wall, and he grinned every time he saw it. Mrs. Grayson didn't bother Timmy after that. She stayed in her house, keeping her curtains closed. She learned her lesson the hard way: don't mess with Timmy Jackson. The neighborhood felt happier without her yelling all the time. Justice was served, and Timmy's win made everyone cheer. So here's the big lesson: even the smallest kid can beat the biggest bully. Timmy didn't shout or get mad. He didn't punch or cry. He used his brain instead. He stayed quiet, worked hard, and waited for the right time. And it worked. Mrs. Grayson thought she was the boss of everything. She thought she could push Timmy around because he was just a kid. But guess what? She didn't see him coming. Timmy's smart idea turned it all around and he won. The next time someone tries to boss you or be mean, think of Timmy. You don't have to be loud or big to win. Sometimes the quiet ones have the best tricks. They watch, they plan, and they surprise everyone. You can do that too. Use your head, stay cool, and show them what you've got. What did you think of Timmy's big win? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear. Did you like this story? Give it a thumbs up if you did. I've got more fun stories coming, so stick around. You won't want to miss them.